Darkness fell quickly, and into the gathering gloom they saw two more figures sulk into the cabin. "We'll go now, for we want the fellow who's selling the moonshine." Again Hale was beset with doubts about the boy and his own responsibility to the boy's brothers. The lad's eyes were shining, but his face was more eager than excited, and his hand was as steady as Hale's own. "You slip around and station yourself behind that pine tree, just behind the cabin." The boy looked crestfallen. "And if anybody tries to get out of the back door, you halt him." "Is there a back door?" "I don't know," Hale said rather shortly. "You obey orders. I'm not your brother, but I'm your captain." "Beg your pardon, sir. Shall I go now?" "Yes, you'll hear me at the front door. They won't make any resistance." The lad stepped away with nimble caution high above the cabin, and he even took his shoes off before he slid lightly down to his place behind the pine. There was no back door, only a window, and his disappointment was bitter. Still, when he heard Hale at the front door, he meant to make a break for that window, and he waited in the still gloom. He could hear the rough talk and laughter within, and now and then a clink of a tin cup. By and by there was a faint noise in front of the cabin, and he steadied his nerves and his beating heart. Then he heard the door pushed violently in and Hale's cry, "Surrender!" Hale stood on the threshold with his pistol outstretched in his right hand. The door had struck something soft, and he said sharply again, "Come out from behind that door. Hands up." At the same moment the back window flew open with a bang, and Bob's pistol covered the edge of the open door. Caliban had rolled from his box like a stupid animal. Two of his patrons sat dazed and staring from Hale to the boy's face at the window. A mountaineer stood in one corner with twitching fingers and shifting eyes like a caged wild thing, and forth issued from behind the door, quivering with anger, young Dave Tolliver. Hale stared at him amazed, and when Dave saw Hale, such a wave of fury surged over his face that Bob thought it best to attract his attention again, which he did by gently motioning at him with the barrel of his pistol. "Hold on there," he said quietly, and young Dave stood still. "Climb through that window, Bob, and collect the batteries," said Hale. "Sure, sir," said the lad, and with his pistol still prominently in the foreground, he threw his left leg over the sill, and as he climbed in, he quoted with a grunt: "You always go in force to make an arrest." Grim and serious as he was, with June's cousin glowering at him, Hale could not help smiling. "You didn't go home after all," said Hale to young Dave, who clenched his hands and lips, but answered nothing. "Or if you did, you got back pretty quick." And still Dave was silent. "Get 'em all, Bob?" In answer the boy went the rounds, feeling the pocket of each man's right hip and his left breast. "Yes, sir." "Unload 'em." The lad broke each of the 4 pistols, picked up a piece of twine and strung them together through each trigger guard. "Close that window and stand here at the door." With the boy at the door, Hale rolled the hand barrel to the threshold, and the white liquor gurgled joyously on the steps. "All right, come along," he said to the captives, and at last young Dave spoke. "What are you taking me for?" Hale pointed to the empty hand barrel, and Dave's answer was a look of scorn. "I never brought that here." "You were drinking illegal liquor in a blind tiger, and if you didn't bring it, you can prove that later. Anyhow, we'll want you as a witness." And Hale looked at the other mountaineer, who had turned his eyes quickly to Dave. Caliban led the way with young Dave, and Hale walked side by side with them while Bob was escort for the other two. The road ran along a high bank, and as Bob was adjusting the jangling weapons on his left arm, the strange mountaineer darted behind him and leaped headlong into the tops of thick rhododendron. Before Hale knew what had happened, the lad's pistol flashed. "Stop, boy!" he cried, horrified. "Don't shoot!" And he had to catch the lad to keep him from leaping after the runaway. The shot had missed. They heard the runaway splash into the river and go stumbling across it, and then there was silence. Young Dave laughed. "Uncle Judd'll be over here tomorrow to see about this." Hale said nothing, and they went on. At the door of the calaboose, Dave balked and had to be pushed in by main force. They left him weeping and cursing with rage. "Go to bed, Bob," said Hale. "Yes, sir," said Bob, "just as soon as I get my lessons." Hale did not go to the boarding house that night. He feared to face June. Instead, he went to the hotel to scraps of a late supper and then to bed. He had hardly touched the pillow, it seemed, when somebody shook him by the shoulder. It was McFarland, and daylight was streaming through the window. "Gang of those Falins are here," McFarland said, "and they're after young Dave Tolliver, about a dozen of them. Young Buck is with them and the sheriff. They say he shot a man over in the mountains yesterday." Hale sprang for his clothes. Here was a quandary. "If we turn him over to them, they'll kill him." McFarland nodded. "Of course, and if we leave him in that weak old calaboose, they'll get more help and take him out tonight. Then we'll take him to the county jail. They'll take him away from us." "No, they won't. You can go out and get as many shotguns as you can find and load them with buckshot." McFarland nodded approvingly and disappeared. Hale plunged his face in a basin of cold water, soaked his hair, and as he was mopping his face with a towel, there was a ponderous tread on the porch. The door opened without the formality of a knock, and Devil Judd Tolliver, with his hat on and belted with two huge pistols, stepped stooping within. His eyes, red with anger and loss of sleep, were glaring, and his heavy mustache and beard showed the twitching of his mouth. "Whar's Dave?" he said shortly. "In the calaboose." "Did you put him in?" "Yes," said Hale calmly. "Well, by God," the old man said with repressed fury, "you can't get him out too soon if you want to save trouble." "Look here, Judd," said Hale seriously, "you are one of the last men in the world I want to have trouble with, for many reasons. But I'm an officer over here, and I'm no more afraid of you." Hale paused to let the fact sink in, and it did. "Than you are of me." "Dave's been selling liquor." "He ain't," interrupted the old mountaineer. "He didn't bring that liquor over here. I know who done it." "All right," said Hale. "I'll take your word for it, and I'll let him out if you say so. But " "Right now," thundered old Judd. "Do you know that young Buck Falin and a dozen of his gang are over here after him?" The old man looked stunned. "What now?" "They're over there in the woods across the river now, and they want me to go give him up to them. They say they have the sheriff with them, and they want him for shooting a man on Leatherwood Creek day before yesterday." "It's all a lie," burst out old Judd. "They want to kill him." "Of course, and I was going to take him up to the county jail right away for safe keeping." "Do you mean to say you'd throw that boy into jail and then fight them Falins to protect him?" the old man asked slowly, incredulously. Hale pointed to a two-story building through his window. "If you get in the back part of that store at a window, you can see whether I will or not. I can summon you to help, and if a fight comes up, you can do your share from the window." The old man's eyes lighted up like a leaping flame. "Will you let Dave out and give him Winchester and help us fight him?" he said eagerly. "We three can whip 'em all." "No," said Hale shortly. "I'll try to keep both sides from fighting, and I'd arrest Dave or you as quickly as I would a Falin." The average mountaineer has little conception of duty in the abstract, but old Judd belonged to the better class, and there are many of them that does. He looked into Hale's eyes long and steadily. "All right." McFarland came in hurriedly and stopped short, seeing the hatted, bearded giant. "This is Mr. Tolliver, an uncle of Dave's, Judd Tolliver," said Hale. "Go ahead." "I've got everything fixed, but I couldn't get but 5 of the fellows. 2 of the Berkeley boys, they wouldn't let me go tell Bob." "All right. Can I summon Mr. Tolliver here?" "Yes," said McFarland doubtfully, "but you know " "He won't be seen," interrupted Hale understandingly. "He'll be at a window in the back of that store, and he won't take part unless a fight begins, and if it does, we'll need him." An hour later Devil Judd Tolliver was in the store. Hale pointed out, and peering cautiously around the edge of an open window at the wooden gate of the ramshackle calaboose. Several Falins were there, led by young Buck, whom Hale recognized as the red-headed youth at the head of the tearing horsemen who had swept by him that late afternoon when he was coming back from his first trip to Lonesome Cove. The old man gritted his teeth as he looked, and he put one of his huge pistols on a table within easy reach and kept the other clenched in his right fist. From down the street came 5 horsemen, led by John Hale. Every man carried a double-barreled shotgun, and the old man smiled, and his respect for Hale rose higher, high as it already was, for nobody, mountaineer or not, has love for a hostile shotgun.